If a League of Legends coach can make $31,500, imagine how much a coach running up a biz op offer in the money making niche can possibly make. Now, before I get into this entire webinar funnel breakdown, I want to make something very clear. If you're going to get distracted and click off of this video and not watch the entire video, no part of this video will make sense to you. So if you want to create a successful webinar for yourself or for your creator as an operator, watch to the end of this video for this to make complete sense. And take notes. Bring out a notebook, take notes. So first things first, there are three main components to a webinar: the pre-webinar, live webinar, and post-webinar. First, the most important part, I'd say about 70% importance goes to the pre-webinar stuff. Everything pre-webinar. So everything pre-webinar covers the offer creation, landing pages, and then finally pushing traffic to the webinar opt-in page. So when it comes to creating the offer, it's very important that you have a clear document that is formulated with yourself and the team to come to an agreement as to what offer to push on the webinar. The price ranges for the offer can really vary from $1 up to $2,000, probably 1.5K as the limit for a webinar. Alternatively, you can have a CTA on the webinar for them to book in a call with your sales team. And as you can see over here, we ran up 3 webinars for our client Perry, the League of Legends coach, and they were all priced at different ticket points. The first one was $597, other one was $297, and the other one was a $197 product. Now, it really depends on your niche, on your market research, and a lot more things on exactly how to price it. And by the way, that's how much we made on the first webinar itself, on WAP, of course. And I have to mention that the offer creation part is fairly important, because if you start continuing on the other steps on the webinar build out, and then for some reason you're like, I want to go back and change something in the offer, that's going to put you a lot of steps behind, and you're going to have to redo a lot of things, and you'll probably end up having some places that you missed, and your entire webinar will just be kind of cooked. So put effort into the offer creation such that you don't have to revisit it until the webinar is complete and it's time for the next one, and you can analyze and evaluate for the next webinar. So once the offer is confirmed, you've decided on what you're going to be pitching on the webinar, which by the way is at about the 40-minute mark of the webinar, assuming a typical webinar is about 60 to 90 minutes. And this brings us to stage number 2, landing pages. This is powered by Webinar Jam and Go High Level. We connected it such that it works pretty well together. The landing page is very simple. The title, the subtitle of the landing page should not be very difficult if you have a great offer that is nailed down to the coffin. So you have a VSL on it as well, which by itself has its own structure, because the VSL is pretty much telling people why they should sign up for a, by the way, free webinar. You say free webinar because in a webinar you provide free value to your audience, and of course towards the end you do pitch them on something. However, they still are able to get a lot of value for free in the webinar, because you have to keep in mind, this is a bit of a side note, but every time you get a lead in your funnel, in your system, in this case, an opt-in to your webinar, even if they don't convert on your webinar, they can still eventually become a paying customer for your brand, for your offer. So never get disheartened when you see numbers like a 3 or 5% conversion rate from your webinar, because that's very typical, first of all. And second of all, you still now have a bigger lead list than what you did before you started pushing the webinar. So you are still winning overall. So the landing page should obviously have the title, the VSL, and then have a section that says what exactly they're going to get on this live masterclass. And of course, have these buttons in place, have a pretty clean design. You don't have to overcomplicate things. Obviously, this was done a while back, but if I was to redo the landing page, I would make it look much better and a bit more clear in terms of like step 1, step 2, step 3 of what people should be doing. A small section about the host, and as always, every landing page in info has to have a bunch of testimonials and results of not just yourself, but students especially. And then once they click the button, they get the webinar opt-in page where you ask them for only 3 things: phone number, email, and first name in the opposite order. And once they opt in, they get a success page, aka a confirmation page. This page is going to contain another video in most cases. This video is a thank you video. It can just be a YouTube video that you already have on your channel that aligns with the topic of the webinar. to sort of use as a pre-call asset as if you were doing a sales call funnel. But this video has to give them reason to be excited for the webinar, which is going to contribute towards having the highest show up rate possible. And you can add more things to this, but the simpler it is, the better. We had the link to the actual webinar over here for people to save to their calendar. And if I was to redo this part, I would even add a section where they can add it to their calendar. There is a configuration that you can do for that as well. They get put into an email sequence leading up to the webinar to make sure that they show up, they're excited, they're well prepared, and they have all the tools and knowledge necessary for them to make a decision on whether or not to buy from you on the webinar. Next thing is the most crucial part. I'd say this part itself holds about 60 to 55% of importance of a webinar, probably 65% of importance on a successful webinar. So pushing traffic is essentially pushing people to the landing page over here, because if you don't have anyone coming to this page, they wouldn't know what they're signing up for, meaning they don't know where to hop on for your live masterclass, right? So the landing page contains all the reasons why they should opt in. Even though it's a free live masterclass, you still need to tell people why to do something. To sell something even for free is very difficult if you're not following set procedures. Now, coming on to pushing traffic to opt-in section. So for Perry, we had Instagram, YouTube, Discord, X, Twitch, Patreon, School, and ConvertKit for his existing email list, which were not many. We pushed traffic on every single platform. So obviously this was a great creator because he was pretty prominent in the space. He was pretty much top in the game in terms of League of Legends coaches. And he was present on a lot of platforms with a lot of motion on every single platform. But you must be thinking like, damn, he only had 6.5K followers. Yeah, he had a lot on YouTube. He had a fair number of people on Discord, a fair number of people on Twitter, etc. However, the best part about him, he didn't just have numbers as followers, he had a lot of posts. He put out several pieces of content every single day, more than I've seen in most creators, and that's what created a successful webinar for him. You guys must be thinking that this guy is a League of Legends coach and he made so much freaking money by not even selling an offer that relates to money. It's just League of Legends nerds that want to join a live training and pay Perry an amount to get coached to get better at a game. Just try to put that in your brain. That's crazy. For me, I didn't even know this was even possible to make this much money from a League of Legends coach. It was just mind-blowing. But when you see demand, when you do the right market research and you see, okay, people would genuinely pay for something like this, you're going to rip. You're going to make a lot of money. So depending on how much time you give yourself to push the webinar, this will apply for you. But I would say do not post more than 7 days worth of stories pushing to a CTA for a webinar. In this case, I think we had 11 days out for the first webinar. And what we did is we posted a set of 2, 2, 2, 2, 1, and 2. You don't have to follow the number of stories that we posted for one sequence. Honestly, you could probably get away with just 1 or 2 images instead of 4. The lesser number of stories that you have, for example, this one would have had the most number of views provided we let the previous stories expire and we didn't post anything after that story. So this is the story sequence that we used to push the webinar, and we were 10 days out for the first webinar. By the way, I would give yourself 10 to 14 days to push the webinar. Anything more than that and you will decrease the show up rate. Anything less than that, you just wouldn't get many people opt in. So the first thing we did on day 1 of pushing his webinar on his stories was to make a sequence story of 4 pieces in which we essentially created a story for the people connecting to their thoughts. So the first story was a question, something that maybe questioned themselves or reminded them of a question or concern that they had in the given niche in the industry. And then you sort of bridge the gap and tell them how you were in a similar position and how you have achieved a lot of success recently. And you then show the link to the webinar. This, by the way, can be done a bit differently, but this worked for us and it'll work for a lot more people if you keep watching this video. 2 days later, we posted some results of some students. If I was to redo this again, I would be probably spamming 10 more stories just like this across these several days with just a lot of student results. Student results and personal results, the combination works the best to convince anybody to click any link or to even just watch your story. You have to give people a reason as to why you are the best at what you do in a given niche, in a given business, in a given space. And every time you form a story, you have to keep in mind that you can't spam stories every single day. That's why in most of these cases, we had a gap of at least one day, but towards the end, we ramped it up a bit more to push people and push a bit of urgency. But showing people social proof as to why you're the authority figure, technically you are on a pedestal, because this guy was literally a League of Legends world champion, well, competing for a world champion, and he had a lot of authority. And you just have to capitalize on your achievements you have, the experience you have, and tell people why they're not stuck in the mud forever, and that you can actually help them if they sign up for this live masterclass. Another thing I want to mention is that we had a big, good problem. We had too much traffic. We had too much motion on Instagram. If you have a look over here, this is a brief glimpse into his reels. His reels got a lot of views with nothing crazy. I don't think we really focused on hashtags or anything else. We just posted videos and he got a lot of motion, a lot of people commenting, a lot of people messaging him. And so we created one of the craziest ManyChat automations I personally have created. And we made sure that every non-follower followed Perry and they got a free resource of some sort and signed up for the webinar. So if you want to have a look at that automation, you can. But moving on, we had YouTube. He posted every single day, a long form video every single day, and he got tens of thousands of views per video, in some cases even 100,000 plus in six-figure views. And of course, we had the free Discord, we had his Twitter, we had Twitch where he used to live stream, his Patreon, another, I think, low ticket community, and school was a free community, and his current email list. So we ramped up traffic in every way possible, because you guys have to keep in mind, as I said, that is 65% of the importance of a successful webinar is the traffic. How much traffic you push. You can also do paid ads to push people to opt in for your webinar. But if you already have immense organic traffic and it's like your first few webinars, capitalize on that before you even consider doing paid ads. So you get proof of concept, you know what people want, and you have one of the best webinar funnels in your space. Moving on, so as that was being pushed, as the traffic was being pushed, and simultaneously we also started building out the webinar slides to present on the webinar, and that was about 140 slides, and it took a fair bit of time, but enough time for us to be ready in time for the webinar to go live. Now, this is where the fun begins, right? As soon as they opt in, as soon as they get pushed on all these platforms to the landing page up here, they get put into the sequence that I mentioned earlier. Now, this part right here, the email sequences, you need to give them at least one email per day with smart, intentional copy in the email, with a clean reason why they should be looking forward to the webinar. And of course, SMS automations. I wouldn't recommend spamming the SMS as much as the emails. I'd say give them one SMS as soon as they opt in, another one the day after, and then the next few should be 2 days out, 1 day out, 12 hours, 6 hours, 2 hours, 1 hour, 10 minutes live. Something of that sort. Build up the pace rapidly as they're approaching the webinar live date and time. Now the fun begins. This is everything live webinar. So for the webinar, we ran up a lot of traffic. So we knew exactly how to push the traffic. And so we got results like this, where 4.2 thousand people visited the page with a 33% opt-in rate, which was insane considering the fact that this guy was in a completely vague niche. This was our first ever webinar, and we had 1.4K people sign up for it. Keep in mind, we got a 58% show up rate, and I believe the typical in the industry is about 20 to 30%. So we actually reached the capacity of the room on the current plan that we were on Webinar Jam. So live on the webinar, we had to upgrade to the maximum package on Webinar Jam just because we had more than 500 people show up for the webinar. So as soon as the webinar begins, the presentation also begins where the creator's camera is on, mic is on. He's making sure by looking at the chat and asking his audience if they can hear him and see him clearly or not. And the webinar commences. Now, after being 45 minutes into the webinar, we came to the pitch. Transitioning into the pitch of the webinar. Now, because people are finally starting to realize that you're about to sell them into something, only the real people stick around. Hence why, if you have a look over here, in the 43-minute mark, which is when we started pitching the main paid offer, 691 people were still on the webinar. And I believe at the start we had about 850 people approximately. So quite a few of them actually stuck around. And if I go down here, you will see that this is approximately where we started pitching the offer. And of course, and as you can see, not many people could afford it or really wanted it, so they dropped off. But that's very typical when you start pitching something, right? So we then cash collected 8.5K on the webinar itself. So we were on our screens watching this happen live. I even have a video vlog about this. I'm going to attach it in the description, where I documented the experience of my first ever webinar with Perry. And this is the end of webinar report analytics, where 850 people attended the webinar and the average person spent an hour and 15 minutes in the webinar, which is insanely high in any webinar I've ever seen before. And you can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I genuinely believe that is one of the strongest numbers I've seen. And 29% watched the full webinar, which once again is pretty high. So you must be wondering, that's only 8.5K on the webinar. Keep in mind, there now comes the everything post webinar. This is where we made the additional money to come down to 11.2K. So post webinar, we have email and SMS sequences for the people that did not show up for the webinar or did not purchase on the webinar. In conclusion, they didn't purchase the offer on the webinar. Those people, we filtered out and hit them up rapidly for the next 14 days, and that led us in 2.6K additional cash collected just from the emails and SMS, no sales calls, nothing else. And that led us to 11.2K in the first webinar. And of course, that was all collected on WAP. So that's the exact funnel that we used to make a League of Legends coach $31,500. So if you're still watching this video and you're a coach or you're an operator and you are not in the same gaming niche, but you still have a creator with great traffic and great potential, the webinar funnel is probably the next move for you. It depends on several things. I have a full analytics board on exactly if or when a creator should even start considering a webinar. But if you make the wrong move and start a webinar when you haven't ticked all the boxes for you to be even eligible to run up a successful webinar, you will just be wasting your time. So the webinar funnel is only, first of all, the two biggest things is you need to be posting very frequent content. And second of all, you need to have a lot of traffic. You need to have these two things at least in check before you can tick off the other boxes, which I'm not going to go through now. But if you are a coach and you want to run up a webinar, you feel like you're going to be qualified for it. If you're an operator that wants to learn it, DM me on Instagram. I'm going to have it linked down below. If you have any specific questions as well, feel free to ask me. And coaches specifically, if you are to message me, please message me from your main account so I can see if or not we can really work with you. And if you think that this webinar funnel only works successfully for this one League of Legends coach, you're wrong, because I've got all of this information from one of my coaches, Ben Beta, and he is one of the best people to learn from when it comes to webinars. So this works for every niche. Of course, it differs a little bit here and there, but overall, this is the structure. Believe me, the first stage, the first component is the most important. Everything pre-webinar is going to be the most important, and it's going to be the determining factor to the success of your webinar. And as I said at the start of this video, this was a League of Legends coach that made $31,500. If you're a coach that has a BizOp offer that literally shows people how to make more money, you can only imagine how much more money you can be making if you did a webinar. Webinars work. You need the right help, you need the right team, you need the right copy, you need the right front-end marketing systems, you need the right back-end systems and automations, and you have to have conviction when you speak on the live masterclass. Because conviction on your live masterclass, on your webinar, is what's going to maintain your audience retention. So if you have a sloppy presentation, a sloppy pitch, it's going to be merely impossible for your webinar registrants to convert into paying customers.